If you're interested in learning how to overcome objections, but in a way that's grounded in how people actually make decisions, and that leads to clearer, more confident yeses without wasting your time or energy, then this video is going to be for you. If on the other hand, you're looking for a traditional sales video about scripts, objection handling, or ways to persuade people into saying yes, now would be a great time to click off. My name is Patrick Choi. I've built multiple seven-figure real estate businesses across sales, rentals, flips, wholesaling, and creative deal structuring, all while helping others to make more money in their real estate businesses. I don't believe in overcoming objections. Most objections aren't actually problems to solve, and instead I look at them as signals that something wasn't clarified early enough. Maybe trust wasn't established yet, or the person doesn't quite feel in control of their decision yet. Objections often point to three things: unclear expectations, lack of trust, or loss of autonomy. When the conversation is set up correctly, objections don't need to be handled. They usually resolve themselves. Now, it's important to note that not every customer is going to be for you, and that's okay. I have a whole video dedicated to this topic, which I'll link somewhere above here or down below. Setting the table means establishing expectations early. How decisions get made, what matters to them, what would make this a non-starter. It also creates time and space for both sides to slow the conversation down and actually surface those things. In psychology, we often refer to this as priming. You're signaling what kind of conversation this is going to be before it really begins. And if something feels like a deal breaker in the first conversation, it's almost never going to go away later. Now, this is something that I'm always telling people, that breaking up early is uncomfortable, but breaking up later is expensive. The cost of misalignment is always the same. It costs time, money, emotional energy, and reputation. Walking away early is simply choosing to be intentional about where you want to invest your time and energy. So here's something that I say at the start of almost every conversation with a prospect to set the table for things that usually come up as objections later. There is no standard operating procedure on how these conversations are supposed to go. This meeting is for us to figure out exactly what you can expect from me as the agent and what I expect from you as the customer. Because at the end of the day, I can't care about buying or selling a house more than you. Whatever your level of intensity is, I'll be right there to match it. And if there's something about me that feels off or isn't a perfect fit for you, it's completely okay to let me know and my feelings won't be hurt. Deal? This works because it sets the tone for the entire relationship before anything meaningful is at stake. You're not pitching, posturing, or trying to control the direction of the conversation. You're establishing the rules of the environment. What this accomplishes is simple. It removes pressure by making it clear that there's no right answer that they're supposed to arrive to. And it gives explicit permission for honesty, including the possibility of not working together. It frames the relationship as mutual, not one-sided or transactional. And it signals that effort and energy are matched and not forced. When people understand that nothing is off limits and you won't be punished for being direct, they stop managing the conversation and they start participating in it. That's when you get real information instead of polite resistance. People already know that you benefit financially if they move forward with working with you, and pretending otherwise just creates quiet tension. So I try to name it instead. I'm very clear that I'd like to work together, but only if buying or selling is genuinely the best option for them. Sometimes that means asking whether they've explored other options that don't involve me at all. When people realize that you're not attached to an outcome, the conversation changes and you can feel the tension leave their body. Detachment creates less defensiveness, more honesty, and clearer conversations. They stop posturing and protecting their position. They become more willing to be honest about what they're unsure about and what they're afraid of. If this isn't addressed early, it doesn't disappear. It usually festers into objections and doubt. Trust shows up when someone feels safe being truthful, even if that truth doesn't benefit you. So here's what I tell any prospect. I would love to earn a commission but only if selling a house truly benefited you the most. Have you considered every option, including keeping the property and turning it into a rental? This works because it acknowledges your incentive up front, reframes your role from the salesperson to an advisor. It gives the customer permission to consider options that don't benefit you and signals confidence. You're not afraid of losing the deal because you trust the process. From a probability perspective, I know that the likelihood of someone actually being able to keep their property or becoming a landlord is fairly slim. But that's not actually the point here. By widening the conversation, you put them in a position of clearly saying, yes, I want to sell. And when people feel like you're genuinely helping them evaluate the full picture, not steering them towards an outcome, they're far more likely to receiving your input when it actually matters. Once trust is in place, the conversation naturally shifts. You're no longer trying to convince anyone of anything. You're helping them to think clearly about the situation that's often emotional, confusing, or overwhelming. When someone has a strong opinion about price, timing, or strategy, the instinct is to try to correct them, but that usually puts people on their heels and creates more resistance. Instead, it's more effective to understand how they arrived at that conclusion, whether they're open to talking it through, and what it would realistically take to actually get there. And the secret is, how do you have this conversation without it feeling like an interrogation? For example, if someone gives you a price that you know is too high, you would say, I don't think that your price is unreasonable. Under the right circumstances, I think that we might actually be able to get there. Would you be open to talking it through with me and discuss all of the conditions and strategies that it would take to make that price a possibility? This works because you're not asking for agreement on the price. You're asking for permission to have a two-way conversation. That small, low-pressure yes opens the door for real dialogue. It allows you to understand how they're thinking, what they're actually anchored to, and what trade-offs would actually be required. It moves the conversation away from defending a number towards understanding what it would actually take to make that number work. Once that dialogue is open, clarity usually follows. As people understand what it would actually take to hit their number in time, money, and effort, they often recalibrate their expectations on their own. When they come down on price themselves, this is not a concession, it's a conclusion they feel ownership over. If you found this video to be helpful and there's an idea or a situation that you want to talk through, feel free to scan the QR code or use the link in the description to schedule an Ask Me Anything session. If you book a 60-minute session, make sure to use my promo code YouTube to get 25% off on your first call. By this point in the conversation, the goal isn't to get agreement. It's ownership. When people feel like they've arrived at the decision on their own, everything downstream is cleaner. Expectations are clear, communication improves, and there's far less emotional whiplash. Most of the frustration in our business doesn't come from hearing no, it comes from thinking that you had a yes, only to get ghosted or have someone back out once that pressure is gone. That usually happens when the conversation moves faster than their internal decision-making process. That's why a forced yes is so fragile. They rely on momentum instead of conviction. When you slow the conversation down and give people room to decide, something really important happens. If they move forward, it's intentional. If they don't, there's clarity instead of confusion. At the end of each consultation, I'll simply say, you don't have to give me an answer right now. I hope that this meeting was helpful, and all I ask is that if I'm not the right person for the job, that you let me know. And I promise you my feelings will not be hurt. Is that something that we could agree on? Paradoxically, that makes an agreement far more meaningful when it happens. Why this works is that it removes pressure by giving them a clear, respectful exit, and it shifts control back to them, which people instinctively respond well to. It opens up two-way dialogue instead of forcing a decision on the spot, and it creates psychological safety to be honest and not agreeable. When someone answers this with know you are the right person. They're not just complying, they're actually choosing. And that choice gives you permission to have real conversation about timelines, expectations, and next steps. And even if they say they need more time or they want to think about it, you become memorable for the right reasons. You didn't pressure them and you didn't corner them. You respected how they actually make decisions. And that leaves the door open whether they move forward now, later, or come back when the timing is right. I want to close with a quick story that I think will tie all of this together. I once went on an appointment with an old coworker. We weren't particularly close, but I came strongly recommended by a mutual friend. After talking through their situation and learning more about their goals to downsize, it became clear that selling maybe wasn't the best option for them, especially in the current interest rate environment. They would have sold, bought a smaller house, and ended up with a higher monthly payment than if they had just stayed put. Now, a couple years went by and I didn't really think about this conversation or interaction very much after that. But the market had changed or improved and interest rates got a little bit better, and they finally called me back. What I didn't realize at the time is that I was actually being shopped against two other agents, one of which was actually a fairly close friend of theirs. And it turns out that I was the only one that slowed the conversation down enough to ask whether selling was even the right choice in the first place. That one question set the table, removed pressure, preserved their autonomy, and made the interaction memorable. At the time, it totally cost me the deal, but in reality, it earned me one later, but with more trust, less friction, and a client that was truly confident about their decision. And that's the point of the entire framework. When you stop trying to overcome objections and instead focus on how people actually make decisions, you get to clearer, cleaner yeses. And the no's stop feeling like losses because they become part of the process that protects your time, energy, and reputation.